Hello everyone, The Nerdy Steve here, and today I want to go over some of the Brothers War preview cards. There's been a large chunk of them released over the past couple days, but also a large... Hello everyone, The Nerdy Steve here, and today I want to start going over some of the Brothers War preview cards that have been coming out over the past couple days and weeks. I'm not going to go over every single card, but only cards that I think, really jumped out at me that will be particularly impactful in constructed environments. So first thing first is we have 4 new Pain lands. So 6 of them were printed in Dominaria United, and here we get the black-green one, Landwar Waste, the blue-green one, Underground River. But I think most importantly, we get the red-white one in Battlefield Forge, and the green-white one in Brushland. And the reason why I think this is important is aggro decks have been really not that competitive for a lot of reasons over this last standard rotation. And I think part of it has been that the white decks, specifically white, green, white, red, haven't had as good mana as they need to compete and be consistent with the other decks. And I think this is kind of, along with a lot of other cards that we will see in Brothers War, I think this is going to finally put them on an even playing field and let them perform at a higher level. It's also really important to note that pain lands are much better in aggressive decks than they are in mid-range and control decks because you don't necessarily care about your life total and using that as a resource, where pain lands are much more punishing in the mid-range decks. So I think these 2 lands, Brushland and Battlefield Forge, are going to be very important, and hopefully we will see a lot more different aggro strategies in the next rotation. So now we have Go for the Throat, which is a reprint, and it is an instant that destroys target non-artifact creature. Go for the Throat is a really powerful and a really good card. But there are 2 things going on right now. It's going to compete with Infernal Grasp, which is destroy target creature, you lose 2 life, and Cut Down, which is destroys target creature if its total power and toughness is 5 or less. Now, one of the interesting things about Go for the Throat, right, and with Infernal Grasp, is that Black now has a lot of really good and different options for targeted removal. And Go for the Throat is going to be very good if the metagame allows decks that don't have a lot of artifact creatures to be really prevalent, right? You're not going to run Go for the Throat if artifact decks or artifact creatures are running rampant and you can't use it to target. But as I mentioned before with the Painland thing, Infernal Grasp, losing 2 life to destroy a creature, that is actually a very tough, cost to pay. And Go for the Throat can replace that Infernal Grasp in a lot of decks. And if, mono red, which might not have a lot of artifact creatures, Go for the Throat is going to be infinitely better than Infernal Grasp. So we're going to have to see how the standard metagame shows up and how, prevalent these artifact creatures are. But I'm very looking forward to adding another good removal spell into standard, and that's going to force deck builders to have to read the metagame and decide how they want to approach, and I think that's always really fun. Speaking of black cards, I have another one after this. Gix Yawgmoth Predator is a 3-mana 3/3. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to one of your opponents, its controller may pay 1 life if they do draw a card. Then it has this ability, which I don't think I'll ever really cast, but it's for 7 mana, you discard X cards, you exile the top X cards of your opponent's library, and you may play lands and cast spells from among cards exiled this way without paying their mana costs. That's fine. It's a late game thing to do with Gix, but I'm really excited for this. If you play Gix on turn 3 and you get an attack with 1 or 2 creatures, you could draw cards. And I really like mono black aggro right now in this format, and there are a lot of really cool 3-drops that you might be able to play. We're going to look at another one in a bit. So I don't know how this will compete with, maybe Graveyard Trespasser. But I do think, playing a good one drop into, a Tenacious Underdog into Gix is going to really set you up for having a huge, huge advantage over what your opponent is doing. Specifically, if it's, a mid-range is still very popular, you can get out ahead and keep that card advantage. And Gix combined with Shieldred, where you're paying life to draw a card, but you end up gaining life because of Shieldred, I think it's going to be really, really, really wonderful. And with its 7-mana ability, I was kind of like, making fun of it at the beginning, but it's not an irrelevant top deck, right? A lot of these games in Standard can go for a really long time, and, having a card that you can do a lot with, even though you would have to then save a card to discard, right? It still gives you something to do with, excess mana and excess lands, and I think that's really, really, really nice. Again, the final ability, not really the relevant part here, but I really think the top half is going to be relevant, and I'm looking forward to playing with it. So, another black 3-drop, we have Pyroxine Flesh Gorger, which is a 7-mana artifact creature that's a 7/5 and has menace and lifelink, and it also has ward, pay life equal to Phyrexian Flesh Gorger's power. Now that in itself, not particularly compelling, right? You don't really want to have a 7-mana French vanilla creature. It doesn't really do anything to turn it impacts the board, and it's not particularly threatening as itself. However, for 3 mana, you can cast it on the 3rd turn for a prototype. And Prototype is an ability where you may cast a spell with different mana cost, color, and size. It keeps its abilities and type. And you can do this on the 3rd turn, or 4th or 5th, right? And you have a 3/3 Menace Lifelinker with Ward, pay life equal to Phyrexian Flesh Gorger's power. And I really, really like this card. Again, it's going to compete mostly with Graveyard Trespasser, and we're going to have to see how much that graveyard removal is relevant here. But this is, a really, really 3/3 Menace Lifelink. It requires your opponent to set up multiple blockers to try and block and kill it. You're gaining life in the process, so against a lot of other aggro decks, it's going to be hard to race you. And as a top deck, this becomes a 7/5, which is huge. And I think that is going to be really, really relevant here. Now, again, as I was saying before, there's going to be a lot of new cards introduced into this standard, right? It's a brand new set, and there's already a black 3-drop that I've talked about, and we have already a couple black 3-drops that we want. So I don't necessarily know how this is going to fit into the grand scheme of things, but this card does get me a lot excited. So the last card I'm going to talk about is In the Trenches, which is a white enchantment for 3 mana that creatures you control get +1/+1. So already, this is very similar to a card called Glorious Anthem, which actually was a very big standard playable card years ago, but it was also very, very playable. But this also has another ability where for 6 mana you get to exile target non-land permanent you don't control until In the Trenches leaves the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery and only once. And this card has been getting a lot of hate, and I think part of it is because it is a mythic and it doesn't necessarily feel mythic. But I do actually think this card, we have to see the full set. Again, I'm saying that a lot, but I do think if a white aggressive based strategy becomes very, very powerful and relevant, which, now with Brushland and Battlefield Forge being legal in standard, so I think that's likely to happen. I think this type of card is going to be very, very, very good. And I think a lot of people are very underrating the 6 mana exile target non-land permanent you don't control ability of In the Trenches. And I think, being a white aggressive card that not only pumps your creatures up, but is also removal, is just a lot in one package. And obviously, this takes a lot of mana and a lot of investment and a lot of things to maybe go right. But I don't think we've really seen this effect before. And when we have seen it on, creatures that like Brutal Cathar that add power and toughness to your board and remove stuff from your opponent's battlefield. Like, that's good, you know? And so I think in the trenches kind of falls into that similar vein. Now, again, not as efficient, and so we'll have to see how things go, right? But I do think, it has the potential to just be very, very good. And we don't know how really White's going to work with Power Stones, right? That one of the new mechanics in Brothers War, that these are these artifacts that can't be used to cast non-artifact spells, but can be used to activate abilities. So if you have a Power Stone or two out, it makes the In the Trenches activated ability cost a lot less and be a lot more reliably activated. So again, we'll see how this goes, but it's something I'm keeping my eyes out because I think it's gotten a lot of hate, but I do think it might be very, very, very powerful. Now, with all that being said, I haven't covered every single card that has released. I'm probably gonna do a lot more over the next week. I didn't even talk about any of the melt cards yet, right? And so I will probably do that. But are there any cards that have jumped out at you? Is there something you're really looking forward to? I can't believe what Brothers War comes out in about 2 weeks, so I'm very, very excited. And again, with all that being said, if you haven't already, like, comment, subscribe, watch me on Twitch. I do coaching, I have a Discord, all those links are down below. And I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, or evening wherever you are. Bye.